There are people that love analytics football podcasts. There are people that love football podcasts that focus on film study. And then there's the degenerates who watch this show who love both, because we do our best to give both sides of the football analysis coin. And this is an excellent week to do so because we have poured over as much data as humanly possible. We have poured over as much film as humanly possible when trying to preview, in our opinion, the 5 best games of Week 8. Some sneaky good matchups here, even with all the injuries, even with all the questions about who's going to play and who's not going to play. Again, we're recording this on a Thursday morning, so we don't have all those answers yet, but still sneaky good matchups nonetheless. Before we get into all of them, though, EJ, my wonderful partner in crime, how are you? What are you drinking? How's your week looking?
I'm good. The week's going by quick. I think this might be one of the first weeks where people question a few of our choices and go, why'd you pick that game? But we'll try and explain that to you in detail, as you said. Yeah, we're recording this again on a Thursday, a little bit of a day later because we have some musical accompaniment on your end of the scale. But I found
that's a way to put it.
One more Buena Vesa in the back of the fridge, and since it's been a fairly long morning for both of us, cheers.
Well, it's 10:15 in the morning, but we've both been up since 4, so it's really lunchtime. So I have my favorite lunch beer. I got a Pacifico. It's Halloween week in California, so it's still technically summer here. So Pacifico, I think, is warranted.
You know what's funny about that?
Huh?
We had our first freeze warning this morning when I woke up.
Already?
Yeah. It was 43 yesterday when I woke up, and this morning when I woke up, the indicator on the computer when I fired up to do agenda work at 30 in the morning said possible freeze warning, and I was like, really? Okay. So
meanwhile, all of our friends in Buffalo that are preparing for the TNF game tonight are like, "Fuck you guys, man!"
Yeah.
Like it's been like
we've got to sit in it.
Well, we're gonna get to Buffalo eventually when we do the stream tonight for one, and then when we recap that game next week. But for now, we're gonna stick with a town not too far away from Buffalo, Pittsburgh. They're facing a semi-red-hot Jags team this week. I just went to the Steelers-Rams game 25 minutes away from me this past week, and it was the first time in a while that there was some sort of competent offense being played, but more contextually competent offense than anything else. It wasn't competent the entire game. It was another one of these like first 3 quarters, everything's going wrong, and then all of a sudden fourth quarter magic Steelers show up. So we'll get into kind of the details of when and where the Steelers look good and when they don't, which is most of the time. But before I unload all of my notes, do you have any notes yourself, EJ, on the other offense they're going to have to keep up with Jacksonville Jaguars?
I do. I think watching the Jacksonville offense is going to be really interesting. Watching Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator, who's had some ups and downs. There was some film came out a couple of weeks ago about Doug Peterson pulling him aside in the tunnel and having a rather terse conversation, which I think is very natural coach and coordinator stuff, but got overblown a little bit. Press Taylor's going to have to try and weaponize Travis Etienne. Like, that's what's working for the Jags right now. He is almost 30% of their total yardage, 37% of their TDs, and they need to find ways to get him the ball, whether it's in the passing game or in the rushing game, and it's going to be tough either way. We'll talk about the Steelers defense in a bit, but they're very good against the run. They tend to be, because of the structures they play, very good against a short passing game as well. But Press Taylor's going to have the challenge of getting the ball into Travis Etienne's hands because, somewhat as he goes, so go the Jaguars. Yes, they also have Trevor and lots of passing weapons, but when Travis Etienne runs the ball well, the Jaguars tend to do well. On the other side, the passing game side as opposed to the rushing game side, they got to get Calvin Ridley going. Calvin Ridley, they got to get him going again. It's not that he's never been going in this offense. They just, of late, he's had almost nothing. I don't care how they do it, but he's only had 4 targets in the last game. He's only got 35 yards total over the last 2 games. That's not enough for a guy you brought in to be a number one. And you see lots of fantasy analysts and everybody else saying Calvin Ridley is a psyop. Calvin Ridley is a mirage. Like, he's not a real thing. He can absolutely be a real thing, and they are going to have to work him in with some targets, and generally that pays off. Now, Jags fans who are very close watchers of the team will say, well, over the last 2 weeks, it hasn't been. They've tried to get in the ball, and it hasn't really paid off. You don't stop with a guy like Calvin Ridley. You keep getting the ball. Shoot or shoot, right? Get the ball in his hands. He's a weapon. They need to find a way to do that to get their rhythm back.
What's interesting about this Jags offense as it relates to Ridley, they've faced the fourth fewest snaps of cover one in the NFL in passing situations. So teams don't really play a lot of like straight up man coverage against them. They're going to see a lot more of it this week because the Steelers love playing cover one. That's one of their favorite coverages. It's cover three, cover one, and then situationally in like third and long, they'll play cover two. But third and five, like that's cover one city for them. They've already played the Colts twice. They played the Bills, Texans, Chiefs. All of them largely played zone, which is in terms of the types of zones they saw, it was a lot of cover two, a lot of quarters, and then either cover six or cover eight, depending on how you want to. Depending on the label you want to put on it for quarter, half versus half, quarter. And, they brought in Calvin Ridley to win one-on-ones against man coverage. They brought him in to be a separator. They brought him in to be the alpha. He's got to go out there and beat these Steelers corners, Joey Porter Jr. included, who has been fantastic for them, but Ridley needs to go out there and win. The last time they faced a defense that played as much man as they're likely to see against Pittsburgh was Atlanta. They rolled out cover one 24 times in that game, which is probably going to be a similar number to what the Steelers play. And most of their cover one they faced this year was in that game. And that was the Christian Kirk show. He ate it up with 8 for 84. Ridley only had 2 for 38. So even in a game where it's like, okay, we brought in Ridley to go beat man-to-man, like they were still force-feeding Kirk because he was winning more consistently. We know the talent is there. We know the burst is there. I truly don't know why he hasn't been featured, but by God, feature the man. Like he's on paper, he's your best receiver, and they're just not giving him the ball in favor of everybody else. So it's one of the NFL's great mysteries because I don't know why things have shook out this way. I mean, you and I spent all summer saying like, oh my God, Calvin Ridley's a good football player, and he's still a good football player.
Yep.
But he's a good football player that's not getting targets. So it's kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah. On the pass protection side, rookie right tackle Anton Harrison's played well in limited action so far. We both really liked him coming out in the draft. We thought he was one of those sort of high tier 2 tackles that was right there, not necessarily in the top conversation of 3 or 4, but literally right after that. Could play well and could play early. He's been both, but look, he's going to get pushed in a way that he hasn't been pushed before because the Steelers pass rush, they're lighting it up. And I think we'll know a lot more about Anton Harrison after this one because we're going to see him face stuff he hasn't seen yet and faced yet. How do you feel about that matchup between the rookie right tackle, who's played well, and the Steelers pass rush that is real solid?
The only time that he's been tested like this so far was in the Chiefs game where they put Chris Jones out on him as an edge rusher, and Jones got 2 sacks on him. And TJ Watt is obviously a Chris Jones caliber player who will line up on the edge a lot more than Chris Jones did. He's only given up 11 pressures so far this year, but 4 of them were sacks, and they were all 4 not great sacks. It wasn't just like, oh, Trevor ran into the pressure. It was like, oh yeah, he got beat. The problem that I've seen with him, if I can point to a problem, again, he's been fine. It's just when he gets beat real bad. He's been a consistent 2-hand puncher. He's got a lot of length, a lot of power, so he kind of wants to get into your chest immediately and just win that battle early. And Jones punished that with double swipe moves multiple times for sacks. TJ Watt obviously uses that move a lot himself. That is his favorite move, and I would caution Anton Harrison against using a 2-handed punch against TJ in this game because he will get beat for a sack if he does so. Also had another sack he gave up early in the year where he just straight up got off the ball late. That's on him. Got to time the snap better. And I don't know if it was he just didn't hear the cadence well. I don't know if he just didn't know what snap count they were on, but got to be off the ball on time. And then there was another one because he does kind of play upright a little bit where he got hit by a hump move, a counter inside. Like they got him at the end of the pocket, and then they just went under his armpit and literally threw him to the back of the pocket and got Trevor. So again, some technical things that he can clean up. Overall, he's been fine for them, but boy, you can't afford to make technical mistakes against the Steelers because not only TJ, but Highsmith will eat you alive if you do.
Yeah, it's going to come. We're going to see it. We're going to see a variety of moves. The rushers in Pittsburgh don't always use the same moves, and when they run loop stunts, he's going to get, possibly a face full of Keanu Benton. That's not great either. Yikes. So it's going to be a long day, and like I said, I think we'll know more about him after this game than we do now. Again, it's been good, and I think really that was the book on him coming in, is that he had a lot of potential. He played really well in certain sets, played with a lot of power, so we expected that he would be pretty good in the run game. The length is good in the pass game, but like you said, a little bit upright. Hand usage is a work in progress, and he's going to learn. He's probably going to learn a little bit on Sunday. We'll see. Flipping over to the other side, the Jaguars D. Look, the Steelers are going to try and run no matter what. Matt Canada has shown that he's going to commit to it, whether or not it's efficient. They're just going to bring the run. So the Jaguars have the 5th-ranked run defense, and they're going to be tasked with making that an inefficient exercise. Whether or not they do, they're still going to see it. Even if you shut the run game down for the Steelers in terms of what they're getting per rush, Canada has shown that he will commit to it and keep going with it and bang his head against that wall, much to Steelers fans' dismay. So Jags need to be able to do it. Once they do it, they can't relax because the Steelers are going to keep doing it, kind of no matter what, whether it's working or not, which is a weird thing to do as an offense, as a football organization. But how do you see the Jaguars' very good run defense stacking up against the Steelers' kind of no matter what rushing attack?
It's kind of an interesting conversation because you listen to Steelers fans and their complaints about this offense, and it's always like, oh, we run on first down, we run Najee into a wall. It doesn't work. Well, Pittsburgh has the 6th highest explosive run rate on first down in the NFL this year. Now, they don't have a lot of first downs to work with because on third down, they've been so bad that they're not converting and getting a fresh set of downs for them to run again. But they actually have quite a few explosive early down carries, both with Najee and with Warren. Like they've oddly been able to get a bunch of good chunk plays on first down. Now, second down run, entirely different conversation because situationally, down and distance, they're just worse on second down in terms of running the ball than they are on first down. Again, a lot of things about the Steelers are inexplicable. But how I think that kind of matches up against the Jags' run defense, which is exceptional on first down in their own right. Like, I do think that particular down is almost going to define this matchup between the Steelers' offense and the Jags' defense. Because if you're looking at the Jags defensively on first down, they got the 3rd best EPA per play allowed against the run. They have the 4th best average depth of tackle, meaning like how far past the line of scrimmage are they making the tackle. They're the 4th shallowest, I guess you could say, like in terms
shortest,
getting contact early, not just getting gashed. And they've allowed the 3rd fewest explosive runs on first down at only 5, going against a very good early down explosive run game in the Steelers. So that particular matchup is really intriguing in terms of why the Jags have been so good on first down against the run. Big reason for that. 20% of all the early down snaps that they're facing against 11 personnel. And 11 personnel is the most common personnel grouping in the NFL, 3 receivers on the field. They match that with base personnel 20% of the time, by far the most in the NFL. So situationally, especially early in the game, when it's kind of like either a one-possession game or a flat even game, when they get 11 personnel on first down, they will run their base 3-4 personnel out there. And they're like, we're still going to stop the run. Like we are going to concede the fact that you might check into a pass because you're not going to like this front that we're going to give you because you're not going to be able to block all of our big dudes. Like we're going to concede that you're going to check into a pass, and we're going to trust our guys to rally and tackle and to hold that for less than what a run would have been. They play a lot of cover 2 and they play a lot of cover 3 from base personnel against 11 personnel. And they trust their guys, and especially their linebackers, to be super rangy and hold up. They got a pick on Gardner Minshew doing exactly that. Again, it was 11 personnel, early down. Game was still close. And they showed cover 3 and then kind of rolled into like a really nifty cover 2 roll look where it's like a half inverted cover 2 and half like normal cover 2. And Gardner, like his brain fucking short circuited. He's like, what's this? And then he just threw it and the safety just caught it. Like there's nobody around. And so they are doing some really, really nifty stuff from base personnel against 3 wide receiver sets. And it's been a big reason why their run defense is so good. So a lot of people are saying like, oh, how's Kenny going to hold up against Josh Allen on 3rd down? And it's like, that's not what determines this game to me. What determines this game is who wins on 1st down. Because in a lot of ways, that's kind of been the driving force of both the Jaguars defense and the Steelers offense.
It's a byproduct of collecting a lot of very athletic defenders who have range and versatility, and the Jags have been doing that for years, and allows them to play base and the drop off not to be as great as it is with other teams when they transition from keeping an extra linebacker out there. Jags are stacked at linebacker inside and outside, so they can do a lot of fun stuff from quote-unquote base sets that look like nickel for other teams. I'd expect to see a lot of variety in the Jags D to try and keep Pickett off balance. If Pickett gets a good, solid pre-snap picture, teams that basically sort of set it and forget it, much like his own defense, I'll say. That's what he sees in practice, right? Like, hey, this is what we're going to play. He's better. I don't think he's necessarily going to see the heaviest diet of blitz after last week. I think Caldwell's smart enough to say, he started to respond pretty well to that. I'm not going to give him those opportunities. Instead, I'm going to run some of this more exotic stuff that makes his brain go, what is that? And see how my success goes against that. We'll see. We'll see. We were wrong last week about a lot of things, like we are most weeks.
A lot of things.
A lot of things went opposite last week. It felt like we said this, so of course the opposite happened. And we joked about that, but we weren't serious. And the NFL took us really seriously last week, apparently. So on the Steelers' offensive side, I think even Matt Canada knows he has to target the cornerback opposite Darius Williams. I hope he knows that, because with Tyson Campbell out, Williams has been playing really, really well for too long against too many receivers to say, hey, I want to send my best guy against him and basically waste or have a bunch of neutral reps where he's basically a decoy, and that's not going to play out very well for the Steelers. In the last 3 games he's played, Najee's had 14 carries exactly. This part fascinates me. The chances that an NFL running back has 14, 14, and 14 is just super odd. I don't know if it's scripted. I don't know, again, if it's checked into, but it just makes me wonder if Matt Canada eats the same thing for breakfast every morning and says, we will get Najee Harris 14 runs every game. But again, they're going to run no matter what. We'll see how that works out for him. And the one thing that's been, I don't want to say a spark, I think you couched it appropriately in the intro to this segment. The one thing that looked a little bit better for the Steelers offense, Deontay Johnson back really helps. He caught 5 of his 6 targets, and 3 of those were for first downs. That's a combination, and his average reception was in the 15-yard range. So he's not only getting yardage, but he's also keeping the sticks moving, and that's the kind of glue they haven't had in the passing game, really in either of those categories. So it's a big get for him to be back, and I think we'll see his workload increase week by week as that continues to happen. Maybe that means a few less runs. I don't think Steelers fans would be mad about that right now. But how do you see the Steelers offense working in this one?
It's interesting because not only do we get the first through third quarter Steelers and then fourth quarter Steelers, which are 2 different teams, but you also get Kenny versus zone versus Kenny versus man, 2 very different quarterbacks. he was good against pressure last week, but part of that was because the Rams were playing a lot of man behind it. And Kenny, when Kenny gets to the line of scrimmage and the ball is snapped and he sees it's just his receivers one-on-one, he's fine. He's totally fine. He's accurate, ball's out on time, well-placed. We saw the game winner against Baltimore. Like, we saw the back shoulder fades to Pickens against the Rams. We saw the bullet slants that he hit to Pickens. I mentioned he had 5 explosive catches in that game, and 4 of them were against press man coverage. Like, Kenny against man is awesome. Like, even the big catch and run to Deontay, it was a return route against man. I believe the Jags coaching staff is smart enough to realize that they shouldn't play man in this one, even though they, in theory, have the DBs to do it. It's more so about not giving Kenny the easy picture, not giving him the picture where he could just look down the field and be like, oh, George is one-on-one, let me just do this. Like no, you have to, as you said, move guys around, constant rotations, make him guess, make him think, slow down his brain. That's really what you got to do, is slow down his brain, slow down his eyes, and give Josh Allen time to get there. Give really your entire defensive line time to get there. And you're only going to do that if you make it so that he can't just get the ball out in 2.2 seconds throwing a back shoulder fade one-on-one down the sideline. Like, that's what you have to do. And I do believe that the Jags will do that. Like, they're a very quarters-heavy team on third down specifically. They don't play a bunch of man on third down like the Rams did, which means I have to imagine with all the different variations of quarters they're going to play, they're going to vary up those looks even within the quarters family, make Kenny think versus quarters specifically, any type of quarters coverage. Kenny does have an 80% adjusted completion percentage, but he does not throw down the field. Like, it's very much I don't want to use the word panicked. He has a conservative mindset against quarters. And I feel like he really doesn't want to make a mistake when he has a bunch of DBs with zone eyes on him. And so he will opt for, I'm going to work the space underneath, because in quarters there is a lot of space underneath. Again, it's 4 over the top, 3 underneath, generally speaking. And so you're going to get the stick routes, like you're going to get the return routes, you're going to get the hitches and all that kind of stuff. And he'll work those because those are really safe against quarters. He only has a 6.0 average depth of target, 5.4 yards per attempt, no picks, but also no touchdowns, only 1 big-time throw against quarters the entire year. It's very, very safe. And I respect it on some level because he's trying not to give the ball away. But also at the same time, if I'm the Jags, I'm like, okay, we're going to run one of like 7 different types of fun little ways to run quarters that we have. Whether we're starting out in middle field close or starting out middle field open and then doing all the crazy movement that we do on the back end. We're just going to do that and then live with the fact that he's going to throw stick routes against us on 3rd and 8 all day, rally, tackle, get off the field. Like, that's a big source of why the Steelers' third down percentage in terms of conversions is so low, is because they don't throw it past the sticks. Because Kenny doesn't do that. And again, I'm trying to be nice about it. He doesn't do that unless he's getting a man coverage look where you could say, fuck it, George is down there somewhere. Like, that's kind of where the Steelers' offense is at. And I think you can win with Kenny Pickett, but you have to win with Kenny Pickett in a very specific type of way. And the Jags are, structurally speaking, built in a way that I don't think is conducive to a Kenny Pickett balling out type of game.
I would agree. In summary, I would agree. Either way, they've leaned on their defense a lot, and the Steelers' defense has been dominant, and they're the reason that the Steelers are 4-2 this year, because they've been outscored 103-127. Like, without this defensive unit, they don't get where they are right now. Certainly not by relying on the offense that we just talked about. TJ Watt, talked about him earlier. He's 14th in total pressures. He's actually tied with Alex Highsmith, which is fun, his teammate. But he's 3rd in sacks. That's Watt. Tied with the Jags' Josh Allen for another tie into this game. So Watt gets home more than most in terms of quality sacks. Out of the number of pressures, he has a high number of sacks. That's not surprising to anybody that's watching the film. So this is tying numbers and film together. But the entire defensive line is fierce and producing. Guys like Leal, Adams, Ogunjobi, and Benton are getting after it, and it makes it very difficult for opposing offenses to do what they want to do because, again, they're going to come against the run. They are going to smash all the short stuff. They are going to put you under pressure. They are extremely physical, and that is largely the driver of what the Steelers, it's the identity of what the Steelers want to do on defense, and they're doing it very well this year. You talked about Joey Porter Jr. behind that. We talked about our sort of confusion about why Joey Porter Jr. wasn't getting more chances. Well, he is. So he leads the entire league in lowest completion percentage allowed out of players with 100 coverage snaps as a sorting at just 10%. Like, that's not leads the league for rookies. It's the league for corners. He deserves even more snaps. And over the last 2 games, it seems like Steelers got the message. Like, he was averaging less than 20% of the snaps over the first 4. Over the last 2, he had 40% and then 78%. So the graph goes like this. It's a hockey stick. They are figuring out that Joey Porter Jr. on the field is a good thing. He's paying off those extra snaps. And that's something we've called for. And it just makes a very dangerous defense, like, even more dangerous, especially behind that rush.
I mean, the Steelers took a long time to play a really talented rookie who's better than the veterans they... What?
I knew
Steelers did that? Really?
Yeah, I mean, weird, right? But at least they got the message. Some franchises just don't. Some franchises say, nope, no matter what, you're on the bench till game 9. At least they saw the production and went, let's roll him out there for a few more snaps. And then, ooh, that worked really well. Let's roll him out there for almost double that amount of snaps the next game.
Overall, I expect the Jags to win this game. I would say a lot of the schematic matchups on offense and defense favor them. Naturally, that means they're not going to win this game, and the Steelers are going to dominate because that's the type of season that it's been.
Yeah, this is primed to be another roller coaster, but we hope we've given you at least a decent view inside. What we think will happen, of course, that means, like you said, that it won't happen.
One thing really quick, and then we'll get right back to the show. We are smack dab in the middle of fall, so it's crew neck season and obviously quarter zip season too. So if you find yourself in the market for one of those, or really anything else, check out our sponsor for today, Vuori. If you're watching the YouTube version of this show, I'm wearing one of their crews right now in burgundy, but they also have a variety of other colors and styles too. Their entire brand is all about creating clothes that you can either be active in or go out in. They have extensive activewear lines for both men and women, but also carry a ton of styles for the office or just lounging around the house and watching football. They make clothes for people of all sizes and body types, as evidenced by me, a bigger dude wearing this stuff right now, and the material quality of each garment is really, really good. Everything I have from Vuori's been washed several times at this point, probably over 10 times each, actually, considering how often I wear it, and you wouldn't even know the difference. It still feels new to me. So I highly recommend checking out everything that Vuori has to offer in their catalog, just to see if anything fits your personal style. And if you do go through their selection at vuori.com/filmroom, that's VUORI.com/filmroom at the link in the description below. And if you find something you like, you can get 20% off your first purchase. And on any orders over $75, you'll get free shipping and free returns if you end up deciding it's not for you. That's a pretty good deal for first-time customers. So again, that's available at the link in the description below, vuori.com/filmroom. Thank you again to Vuori for sponsoring the show. And with that, let's get back to it.
Next game, we've got Rams-Cowboys. Rams offense, I'm start with the word we all love, Puka. We'll see more man this week. And he's going to have to continue his winning ways that he started last week against it. We highlighted in our recap that he's been a zone crusher early in his career. Incredibly productive. All the historical markers that he's surpassing certainly back that up. But hadn't won so much against man. We thought Cooper Kupp coming back, he was going to be the man beater. Well, last year we saw Puka cape up against man, and that should be incredibly scary for opposing defenses. Cowboys especially run the second most cover one overall in the league, only behind the Browns, so Puka's going to have to keep doing it. And I'd expect Kupp to get the same amount of work and looks that he did last week, but catch more of them. Some people might say, oh, he only had 2 catches. It's true. But he had 7 targets. And again, Cooper Kupp didn't get bad against man. Like, he just hasn't played a lot.
Yeah, the drops from Kupp were uncharacteristic. I can't imagine we're going to see that 2 games. Like, they happened right in front of me, and he was getting open.
It's your fault.
It is my fault. I cursed the man just by being there. But even all the Steelers fans around me, when Kupp was dropping the ball, they were like, he can do that?
That's possible?
That's not normal for him. What's going on?
No.
So, yeah, he's not going to have 2 bad games in a row. I have to imagine that if the Cowboys get tired of all the man breakers that we're almost certainly going to see from Puka and from Kupp, I have to imagine they're going to go back to playing a lot of cover 3 because that's how they respond to a lot of the formations and stuff that we see from the Rams. And I know that because 49ers basically structurally run their offense the same in terms of formation, everything like that. Everything's condensed. Everybody's in the core. They don't really like spread you out. They more so use everybody compacted and condensed combined with motion to give themselves really favorable angles in the run game. And then they run a lot of play action off that. It's a lot of stacks, a lot of bunches. And the Cowboys respond to all of this condensedness, if that's even a word, with cover 3. In the San Francisco game, they played cover 3 65% of the time and got absolutely annihilated. And I know McVay was paying attention to that game because, of course, he was paying attention to that game. And I do think that a lot of the man breakers that he's going to use early on are to force them back into cover 3 so that he can say, Dan, Mr. Quinn, you sit right there, you play cover 3 so that we can manipulate all these linebackers and hook zones the same way that Kyle did. Because we got all the same concepts in our playbook. Like we are going to run high lows on those linebackers all day long. We are going to run dig routes against your corners that are going to be playing over the top and from outside leverage all day long. Stephon Gilmore is not going to be able to keep up at this phase of his career with Cooper or even with Puka, rolling inside on these dig routes with speed cuts. Like Stephon, I think, still operates well as a press man coverage corner, but if you're asking him to play in space in cover 3, it's a totally different conversation. And so I have to imagine this day is going to go similarly to the 49ers day from a schematic perspective. Now, whether or not the Cowboys will perform better out of cover 3, we'll see. A lot of that, I think, depends on how well the defensive line can just get home and get pressure on Stafford against a very vulnerable offensive line for the Rams, which we've talked about at length throughout this season. Like, they are not as good in pass protection as the 49ers are. So if the Cowboys are going to shut them down, it's going to be on Micah and all those guys. We'll see what happens, but schematically speaking, I think this is going to play out a very similar way to the 49ers game.
The rush game for the Rams is going to be a little bit different because Royce Freeman is in, and he loves to build up steam, man. I kind of miss Royce Freeman. Like, he loves to one cut and get north-south, and we saw it last week a bunch of times, and they actually opened holes for him to do that. He just loves to plow through the A-gaps. They pulled it off versus the Steelers. Again, we just talked about the Steelers being a very good run defense for all the Cowboys backers who are out there saying, our defensive line's really good against the run. Yeah, so is the Steelers, and they still managed to pop Royce Freeman through 3 or 4 times for really good gains, but he is a bowling ball. He is not Kyron Williams. He is not a slasher. He is not an outside speed guy for the most part. He is not really a cutter. He is a one-cut guy that's going to get north-south and power, and they made it work last week, so it'll be interesting to see how they make that work against Dallas. The Rams defense, this is maybe one of the best matchups of the week. No, I'm just going to say it's the best matchup of the week. Get your popcorn ready. Aaron Donald versus Zach Martin and Tyler Smith. You're going to see those reps. We're going to isolate them. We're going to sit back, grab our favorite beverage, and go, okay, this is awesome on awesome.
I mean, Tyler Smith's been amazing this year. He hasn't played every game, but even in a 4-game sample size, to only allow 2 pressures in 4 games. Like, that's absurd. His pressure percentage allowed, if in terms of just percentage of pass blocking snaps that wind up as a pressure, second in the NFL, second best in the NFL, I should say. I think Robert Hunt's the only one who's less than him. So Tyler Smith has been outrageous, and then of course Zach Martin is Zach Martin, right? So in terms of pass rushing 3 technique against elite pass protecting guard, there's really nowhere to hide for Donald in this one. Like, he's going to have to go up against like an all-pro caliber pass protecting guard, no matter where he's lining up. Maybe they'll just put him out against the tackles just to give him easier matchups. Because believe it or not, the Cowboys tackles this year are easier matchups than the Cowboys guards. It's a hell of a game for a lot of ways, or in a lot of ways, I should say. And that specific individual matchup is probably at the top of the list.
It's weird because somebody I know thought Tyler Smith was going to be a really good guard.
It's funny because when that draft happened, I'll have to go back and look at our draft live stream. You and I were both pretty excited about that pick. We were like, I'm in on Tyler Smith. And then I remember we were looking at like the draft grades the next day, and we're like, why does everybody hate the Tyler Smith pick? Like, he's fucking good. Like, he's super violent. He could play tackle. He'd be a Pro Bowl tackle or an All-Pro guard. And guess what? He's going to be an All-Pro guard. Like, that one at the time, like, this is not a hindsight thing. At the time, we thought that was a great pick. And then we're befuddled that a lot of other people disagreed. And we don't get a lot right. I mean, we get a decent amount right. I'm willing to hang my hat on that one because you and I were both part of the Tyler Smith fan club, and he's thankfully worked out.
Yeah, and the big debate that year was, tackle or guard. Are you drafting to play tackle or guard? And we said play both, but he was at the top of my guard rankings. I had him as a guard, and he was right up near the top. If he wasn't number 1, I think he was number 2. And it was because of that power, short area quickness, all the things that we're seeing him sort of manifest in Dallas. And it was weird the next day because Dallas has obviously drafted interior offensive lineman high, and had good success with it. So you'd figure their fan base was like, "Hey, we trust them. We're gonna give them some slack on this one. They've got a good track record." Instead, it was kind of the opposite. So yeah, that was befuddling. Speaking of befuddling, the Rams D has to tackle, especially late in the game. The game you went to, it absolutely crushed them in the Steelers game. They didn't tackle late, and that was the difference in that game. If they just tackled a couple of times, I don't think the Steelers offense could have overcome the yardage they had to. Instead, they just flat out gave it to them. Like, it was 2 easy, very large plays that put the Steelers in range to win that game. And just a quick shout out to another defender who is the less mentioned kind that we really like. Russ Yeast, probably the least well-known member of the Rams secondary, was one of the most involved against Pitt last week. He had a really good game, super active. So just a quick shout his direction.
One other note in this kind of Cowboys offense versus Rams defense matchup. You and I have both been somewhat confused by the Cowboys run game this year. Mainly confused by like how unproductive it is. Because we both loved Tony Pollard for years at this point, and we've both been waiting for Tony Pollard to get his shot. And Tony Pollard got his shot this year, and he doesn't look like Tony Pollard.
It's so sad. This is real so sad.
And I get it. There's the injury that maybe affected things, but this doesn't look the same. Like, he is 71st in the NFL among players with at least 25 rush attempts in terms of missed tackles forced per attempt. He's broken 7 tackles the entire year, and he's got almost 100 carries. Like, that's bad. Like, objectively, really, really bad.
One of our favorite running backs in the NFL, easily, and he's averaging 35 rush yards a game over the last 3. Like, this is not a blip or a good defensive front or, just he was feeling under the weather or anything else. This is like, wait, guys, what happened? Like, where'd he go? It's terrible. I hate it.
Not breaking tackles. The explosiveness seems less than it was pre-injury. Again, I don't know if something's going on physically, but that doesn't look like Tony Pollard, and it's really, really holding them back. Now, they do get their run game coordinator back this week, Jeff Blasco. He was gone for the first six games, I think it was. Maybe that affects things, but like that doesn't look like Tony Pollard, and I'm genuinely worried that it's going to be like this the entire year, and it's going to be all on Dak to do everything, and that's a tough situation.
That's the problem, is without a true rushing threat, which Tony Pollard has been. That's the whole reason they retained him and made him the number one back in that offense. They get way too one-dimensional, and we throw it back in Dak's lap. Now, some Cowboys supporters might be saying, well, that's fine. Dak's great. Weird stat about Dak this year. He is the literal definition. He is the human embodiment of a roller coaster this year. Every other game for Dak has been really good. So check this out. Games 1, 3, and 5, 58% completion percentage, and 2 of their 3 losses happened in those 3 games. Games 2, 4, and 6, the even games, 78% completion percentage, 20% jump, and all 3 of those are wins. So Dak literally week to week has been up, down, up, down, up, down. Now the bad news for Cowboys fans is if that pattern holds, this is a down week.
I don't know. It depends. How are we counting the bye week? Are we resetting the pattern, or are we counting the bye week?
Now we're
a good one.
We're talking about that like transatlantic travel. It's just jet lag.
Yeah, I don't know. The whole Cowboys team has been frighteningly inconsistent this year. Like when they're on, they are on. Like they destroy teams when they're on. But when they're off, you struggle to think that they're even going to make the playoffs, let alone win a playoff game. I just want to see them put it together for like an entire 3 to 4 week stretch. Like completely a 3 to 4 week stretch where every single week the offense shows up, the defense shows up, and I'm not talking about beating up on like really bad NFC East teams like the Giants. Like I'm talking like quality opponent, which I consider the Rams to be a quality opponent. Like you show up and you annihilate them. Like that's what I want to see from the Cowboys. Like I haven't seen that yet from them. They're capable. We just haven't seen it.
Certainly capable, and that's what their fans want to see too. And that's why being a Cowboys fan is so frustrating, is because you know the stars they have on both sides of the ball. You see performances, week, I don't want to say week in and week out. It's like week to week or every other week, or the defense fired off this week, but the offense really staggered. So if the offense can't get it going, they're going to need to lean on that star-studded defense. Micah needs to keep causing havoc. I'm not going to say cause havoc because he's been causing a lot of havoc. 3rd in the NFL in total pressures behind Hutchinson and Crosby. DeMarcus Lawrence has been good on the pressure front as well. He needs to finish a few more this week. We talk about sacks being fickle, but he's been in the mix. If you look at his pressure stats, it's not a one-man show in Micah, and that's good. That's certainly better for any defense. Quick note about former bootleg defensive gem Marquise Bell. If we're taking, hat tips and victory laps on this one, when I made Marquise Bell a defensive gem a couple of years ago, a lot of people hadn't heard of him. He's been playing well all over the Dallas defense, but especially against the run. He's been sort of what I think we hoped Divine Diablo would become for the Raiders, but he's been a better version of that for the Cowboys. And it was fun during the primetime game, the Sunday night game a couple weeks ago. Like everybody was, a lot of bootleg fans were in the comments going, I know who this guy is because I listen to bootleg, which is exactly what we aspire to do. Really cool to see a guy like that land in a good spot and basically play up to his potential, because as an athlete, had a ton of athletic potential, some really good instincts, and we're seeing that. The NFL game's not too big for him. It's just super cool.
Yeah, one of these DBs converted to linebacker, which has been a trend. Not even just recently. I would say going back 8-9 years at this point. I will say this: there's no way he's still 205. Like I looked at when you put his name in the rundown, and I was like, I know he's a linebacker now, but that's not a DB body. Like he had to have put on some weight. Like
yeah, he's like 215, I'd bet.
Maybe more. Like that dude is yoked. Like absolutely yoked. Which more power to him. Like he, again, linebacker at 220-ish is normal now. But they gotta update his weight because that man is not 205. Okay.
No, he definitely doesn't have the same body type that he did when he came out, and he's progressed. Like, he made a couple of splash plays. Most of them were on special teams in his first year, and you could sort of see the potential, but seeing him really sort of come of age, hit that sort of sophomore bump, understanding the defense, firing through gaps, using the explosiveness, the range, the length, all those attributes, and to make positive plays for a very good defense. This is not a defense that lacks stars. Is really cool.
All right, next game on the docket. I've been waiting for this one for a while, but unfortunately, one of these teams is incredibly banged up, and so I feel like it might be a little bit one-sided when all is said and done. Browns Seahawks. If this was a full strength Browns team against not even full strength Seahawks, just the current Seahawks, to me, this is like the game of the week in terms of just fun factor. Unfortunately, the Browns are not full strength. They're very far from full strength. And unfortunately for Cleveland fans that may be listening or watching this on the YouTube version of the show, I don't have high hopes for this one.
Yeah, I too feel like we're getting robbed a little bit. But first things first, we could make this a total 5-minute summary for the game. Seahawks are wearing the throwbacks. It's over. Seahawks win.
Oh, and they're the best throwbacks too. I don't know.
Good.
Ooh, actually,
they're really good.
Hold on.
Just
Seahawks throwbacks against the Kelly Greens, the Creamsicles, the Dolphins that's probably the top 4.
Oilers are coming this week too.
No. I'm ignoring those. Fuck them.
I know.
Those don't count.
They're good uniforms, but I understand the reticence. Anyways, we could just agree that like all the throwbacks are pretty dope. The Giants throwbacks that they wore a couple weeks ago against the Bills, I love those things. Like, all the throwbacks are great. I think it's worth at least 3 points in this one, so probably the Seahawks roll on that. Let's talk about the Browns defense. Normally we would talk about the Browns offense, but because of injuries, I'm going to start with Browns defense because, damn, Myles Garrett. Like, that's it. That's the tweet. Myles Garrett, completely dominant right now. Our buddy Brandon Thorne tracks a stat called PQR, pressure quality ratio, and it's basically talking about of the sacks a player gets or of the pressures a player gets, like how many are high quality, how many did they cause, how many did the quarterback just kind of were low quality where the quarterback just rolled into them. You alluded to that earlier. 2-to-1 is a great ratio for PQR. That's the top guys in the league. Myles is currently at 4.88-to-1, almost 5-to-1. To put that in perspective, the only other player in the league that's even over 3 when he's almost at 5 is Jalen Carter. And Jalen Carter's been wrecking freaking shop for the Philly defensive line. Everybody else is below 3 in the league, and Myles is almost at 5. Like, this is a guy that is playing the top of his absolute game at the height of his powers and really leading, again, a defense that's full of talent, but he is playing up here right now. Myles Garrett is powering the Browns defense.
He is now at the point of his career where A, he's still in his physical prime, but B, he's seen enough now where he's got every trick. And you give a physical marvel like that every single trick in the book, every single answer to the test, and yeah, they're going to win like that. You know, it's to me, it's no different than, it's going to sound sacrilegious, it's no different than prime Reggie White. Put him on a guard, put him on a tackle, stand up, hand in the dirt, doesn't matter. He's going to win. And he's going to win with every single move. He's going to take your 330-pound guard and throw him with one arm. He's going to walk your all-pro tackle back into the quarterback. He is playing on an entirely different level right now, even by his standards. And I'm not going to wade into the whole TJ Watt versus Myles Garrett discussion because that gets me nowhere, other than just getting death threats.
Yeah, covered in tomatoes. That's where that gets you.
But I will just leave it at this. He is easily one of the 2 to 3 front runners for Defensive Player of the Year. And it's going to be tough to unseat him if he keeps playing like this. Because this, even for him, we haven't seen him do this before. And he was already, on the short list of names for best edge in the NFL. This is new for even him. So he's outrageous. You know, he's one of the reasons why the Browns still could win, because he can take over the game by himself, just like he did against Indy, where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Like Myles can still just have a Myles Garrett day and win the game single-handedly. But he's going to have to, because the Browns offense, you know, no Deshaun Watson again, so it's a P.J. Walker game again. Jerome Ford's out. He's got the ankle, so it's the Kareem Hunt show this weekend. And Hunt, just like Tony Pollard, the juice is not the same. He's got one broken tackle on 33 attempts this year, less than 3.5 per carry, only 2 explosive runs on the entire year so far, and those were when he literally wasn't touched at the line of scrimmage. So Browns offensive line, you're up, guys. Like you got to carry the load on this one, because the Hawks have a very, very good run defense. They're 7th in tackles for loss or no gain. Like you got to keep Hunt clean 2 to 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, or the run game won't be there. He's not going to break tackles on his own. He's not going to burn pursuit angles to the edge. Like that's what Kareem Hunt is now. And as an RB3, you're fine with it. As an RB1, you're not. So it's got to be the Myles Garrett game and the Browns offensive line game. And short of both of those two things showing up, it's going to be tough for him.
Watching the disparity between Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt over the past couple of weeks, where they've been in the same backfield and, you know, getting touches behind the very same offensive line during the same game against the same defense, has been enlightening in terms of running back is a young man's game in the NFL, and Jerome Ford is that, and Kareem Hunt doesn't seem to be any longer. We'll pivot, talk about the Seahawks D. I talked about Myles Garrett. We're going to talk about a much younger player who is starting to ascend, not at that level, but Boye Mafe, guy we loved in the draft, is starting to lead the way for this rush with Jenna Nwosu banged up. Love Nwosu as a free agent ad. He's been delivering for the Clint Hurd defense. He goes down with an injury, and Mafe just kind of grabbed the torch, didn't let it hit the ground, and kept right on running. 20 pressures and 4 sacks this year. 8 of those pressures and 2 of those sacks have been over the last 3 weeks alone. So he is really starting. The light is coming on for him. He was a physical marvel that was a bit young in his player development. He was a bit raw. There was what we call untapped potential. We loved that in the draft. We knew it was going to depend a lot on landing spot. He has landed in the Clint Hurd defense. He has taken lessons from veterans around him, and he is now saying, nope, I got it, guys. Making people sort of forget about the other edge rushers. I think when Nwosu comes back, it's going to be a very good 1-2 punch. But until that happens, they just signed Frank Clark yesterday. So he is a Seahawk again, gives them, again, some insurance down the stretch for any other injuries. And if Nwosu comes back healthy, just one more guy that can get to the opposing passer. And that sort of starts it up. Sad bootleg side note. Love to see Derek Hall start to earn some of those rush reps. Hasn't happened yet. His snap counts have been down for each of the last 2 games compared to weeks 2, 4. So it might just be a balance thing. You'd think there'd be more opportunity with, again, Nwosu snaps having to be divided up between the other guys. We both loved Hall coming out of Auburn, thought he was a little underrated. Hasn't come on for him, but if you want the sort of hopeful, sunny side up version of this, Mafe didn't either in his first season, and look at him now. So don't write off Hall. He's not there quite yet. We'd like to see more of him as he develops, and really hope he takes that sophomore jump in the same way.
You know who did show up in their first year?
Hell yeah.
Devin Witherspoon.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. As confident as I am that Myles Garrett is in the running for Defensive Player of the Year right now, I am even more confident that Spoon is a top, not even top 3, top 2 candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year. It's him and Jalen Carter right now in terms of who's going to get the award. And you could argue equally for either of them. That's saying a lot. Like you brought up Jalen Carter as the only other guy over a 3-to-1 ratio in terms of quality rush reps. The fact that Spoon over his last 3 games, if you just threw the ball at the dirt, you would have had a higher passer rating than targeting Devin Witherspoon. His passer rating when targeted is 6.3. That's unheard of.
Yep.
In a 3-game sample size. He's got 3 pass breakups, a pick, only 14 yards allowed in coverage in the entire 3-game stretch that he's been on. And when they kind of figured out, like, oh, he's an elite nickel, like right now, like today, he's an elite nickel. Like he is a Rondé Barber type of guy as a rookie in the first month of his existence in the league. So they kind of like made him a full-time nickel, and he's just been absolutely demolishing everybody. Also has a sack and a half over that period, so it's not just him in coverage, it's him as a pass rusher. He's great against the run. He tackles. Like Pete Carroll, I think, is ready to adopt him. Like
he thinks he's his favorite grandson. I was going to say son, but like Pete's too old for that. Like he went to the podium this week and basically said, "Oh man, just such a good football player." Like he just gushed in a way that, like, Carroll's always very positive about his guys, but it's different with Spoon. He sees it. He loves the way that guy's playing right now. And I'm just going to throw this out there. Maybe it's a reverse curse. I hope it's a reverse curse. But if the Seahawks pick like one of the preeminent defensive backs and hit on him 2 years in a row and get pipped for Defensive Rookie of the Year twice by teams in green, there's going to be deep sadness in the Pacific Northwest. And it might happen, but I hope not. I hope Spoon keeps playing well. I hope Jalen Carter keeps playing well. That's what we want to see. But he has, as soon as he came into the lineup, he missed first couple of games with injuries. He started playing from his first game. There was no warm-up. There was no figuring it out. He made an impact. I was actually in the stands for that game against Carolina. It was the Spoon show. Like, he was all over it. Like, he made, you knew when he was on the field. And a lot of rookies kind of got to wait. Maybe there's a flash here or there. Nope, not with Spoon. Like, you knew when he was on the field, he was affecting the game from, the first snaps, and he's just kept it going. He's the opposite of Dak. No roller coaster. Just, all killer, no filler, foot on the gas, like, let's go. And it's been really, really cool to see. If the Browns have a chance in this game, it's the Seahawks offensive line. It's beat up. We talked about how good Myles Garrett's been. The rest of that defense is really good. They got to keep hits off Geno. Look, this line is deep into its backups. They only allowed 2 sacks against the Cardinals. But the Cardinals aren't Jim Schwartz's Browns defense. Like, it's not the same thing. So I know that might be sort of booing some Seattle fans right now. Well, we did pretty good last. It's not the same animal that you're going to be facing. On the plus side for Seattle's offense, Kenneth Walker, he's just rolling right now. He was the only 100-yard rusher in the league last week. Looked good doing it. Again, another guy that has really brought impact to the lineup since the very beginning, and as long as he's been healthy, when he's been in there, he's a threat every time. And there's not a ton of guys in the league that are a threat every time they touch the ball from the running back position. He's one of them. That's where the Browns are going to have to try and make hay, is just attacking that offensive line that's down on guys, getting pressure on Geno. Again, pressure and hits limits his effectiveness in the passing game. If they don't do that, with JSN coming on last week, they've still got their rush threats. Sounds like DK is going to play this week. Like, that's a difficult skill position group to sort of put a lid on, and the only way they're going to do it is get through that offensive line and hit Geno.
Overall, Geno, since the first week of the year, like, the Rams game, there was a lot of consternation amongst film Twitter about how Geno handled that first game against the Rams. Obviously, the famous soundbite of Aaron Donald busting through and Geno going, "Oh my God," But since that game, Geno's been back to being Geno, in my opinion.
Sharp.
Very sharp. Like, the 2 picks that he threw against the Bengals, like, honestly, those were just amazing plays by DBs, more so than bad throws or bad decisions from Geno. And for, at least in my opinion, just kind of, because I look at what he's doing every single week because I love Geno. Ever since the Rams game, he has played significantly better and is back to being himself. He's distributing the ball extremely well. I would like to see JSN get more targets, but that's just because I'm selfish and I want JSN to get more targets because he's on my fantasy team and I really fucking need that. Yeah, no.
I mean, enough said. Like,
I'm not saying it's a noble motive. I'm just saying I have a motive to want JSN to get targeted.
Yeah.
There was a throw he had last week, and speaking of JSN, everybody's like, "Oh, JSN would have had a touchdown. Like, why didn't Geno unleash that ball?" But if you're looking at it, like, there's no way that Geno could have known that JSN was going to be open. Like the safety, like you don't know, and Nate Tice did like a little study of it on Twitter. You don't know where the safety is going to go before you let the ball out, and so you kind of have to make an anticipatory throw based on like where like what's the least threatening throw I can make based on where the safety is right now. And going away from JSN was the least threatening throw, and by God, he hit it. Like Gino was dropping dimes last week. So yeah, I'm selfishly frustrated that JSN didn't get the touchdown, but at the same time, objectively speaking, hell of a throw.
Yeah, you're back to, I love Gino being sharp. If he could point it in another direction, it would be good. No reason, but like it's been good to see him back. That was one of my, we always say that week one throws off tons of false positives, but that was probably my largest like lump in the throat panic moment from week one was Gino looking like trash. And I was like, oh no, did the magic dust wear off? And then he came back pretty steadily after that and retained his form and from last year, which was incredibly sharp, top 7 or 8 quarterback in the league at the lowest. So really good to see him back. Like football is just a whole lot better in Seattle when he's playing the way he is.
One quick note, and then we'll get right back to the show. We're about a month away from the best football holiday of the year, Thanksgiving, and it's never too early to plan on how you're going to do your turkey. It's possible even that some of you listening have never done a whole turkey before, and that's totally okay. But if you want some inspiration and guidance for how to do a turkey the right way, our friends over at ButcherBox can help you out with that. They do have whole turkeys available for order, as well as a recipe page dedicated to how to do a great apple cider brine for the turkey, as well as how to roast it to perfection. So whether you're a turkey making veteran or this is your first time ever, it's going to come out great. And ButcherBox, of course, has recipes for every other cut of meat that they offer as well. All of their beef is 100% grass-fed. They have free-range chicken and turkey, obviously, wild-caught seafood, and pork that's raised crate-free. Whatever cut of meat you can think of, they have it available to deliver right to your door in either custom or curated boxes. And if you do want to get one of those whole turkeys that I mentioned earlier for free, by the way, if you order anything from ButcherBox and use our promo code BOOTLEG to get literally any order before November 12th, you will also get an entire 10 to 14 pound turkey for free with that first box, plus $20 off your first order as well. Again, that is an entire Thanksgiving turkey for free, plus a $20 discount on the price of that first box, just by using promo code BOOTLEG at butcherbox.com/bootleg. Thank you again to ButcherBox for sponsoring today's show, and with that, let's get back to it.
Next game, Bengals versus 49ers. I'm guessing the Bengals are going to look pretty darn sharp after a bye week with even more time for Joe Burrow to get physically right. He was starting to, before the bye, look like Joe of old, and certainly in his mobility. And I'm going to put a stake in the ground and say that Jamar Chase has a day again. And most people might say, well, it's not much of a reach, EJ. But neither San Francisco outside corner has looked as solid over the last couple of weeks as they both did earlier in the season. They looked kind of unassailable for the first month of the season. And the cracks in the armor have showed up over the past couple of weeks. And they're allowing more throws out there. They're not getting as many calls, or they're getting more calls against them for DPI. They're not getting away with as much, and they've looked sort of very attackable. And if you want to pick a player in the league to attack somebody, if they're, on the shaky edge of confidence, I'm going with Jamar Chase. So I'm betting that the Bengals challenge vertically, especially early on.
Also have to mention that Joe may or may not have more time to take shots to Jamar, because Orlando Brown is apparently going to be back this week, coming off injury. He will have his hands full with a very, 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 very good 49ers defensive line that is also very, 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 very embarrassed about what happened against Minnesota last week. So, Bosa against a freshly reinserted Orlando Brown. I would probably favor Bosa in that one, so he's going to have to hold up. Actually, now that I think about it, Orlando Brown played against Bosa in college, right? I think he did.
Yeah, they've matched up before, and it's a weird matchup. Well, it's not a weird matchup. It's two very talented players who have two very different styles, and if Bosa can stay out in space, play and use space well, it favors him. If he gets anywhere near Orlando Brown and Orlando Brown gets his mitts on him, like,
well, that's if I recall
becomes
correctly,
a
that's
much
what
more
happened
neutral gig. Yeah.
in the OU Ohio State game. I think that was Baker's last year, if I recall correctly. In the OU Ohio State game, I remember when Bosa was coming out. No, I do remember that now. Orlando beat Bosa consistently because he literally just got his hands on him early, and Bosa couldn't deal with the length. I don't remember if they played against each other in the pros ever since then, but that has been the one thing that has hampered. Not many things have hampered Nick Bosa since he came in the NFL, but the one thing that has is kind of the same thing that happened in college, where if he's going up against a really, really, really long tackle that can get into his chest first before he lands that swipe, that's why he relies on the swipe so much, is because he has to clear his chest constantly. That's kind of the one thing that he struggled to deal with, but yeah, I have to go back and look to see if Orlando played against him in the NFL. I truly can't remember because Orlando's been in the AFC his entire career, but he's bounced around, so I don't know if they've ever actually.
Yeah, it seems like, I'm not sure. It seems like I was going to say must have. I'm going to tone that down and say might have. Interestingly enough, on the Bengals defensive side, I'm going to introduce a San Francisco stat. I'm going to call it the CMC effect. We've had the Dion effect at Boulder and Colorado. This is the CMC effect. Average rushing yards in San Francisco wins this season for CMC, 102. Average rushing yards in San Francisco losses this season, 44. So he is the spark plug of this particular engine. If they get him rolling, look out. They're probably on their way to a W. If the defense can somehow manage to limit those carries and keep his yards low, not going to say San Francisco's not going to win, but it feels a lot less guaranteed. So that's the Bengals' task on defense, is key on CMC and try and limit that guy. It's not an easy thing to do.
They have gotten better in terms of their run defense. I mean, they started out shaky as all hell, but against Seattle, which is a very productive run game, held K-Walk to 3.5 per carry, stuff rate of 18%, which is really, really high. So we know it's in them to be a good run defense. A lot of it comes down to how the Bengals' defensive tackles are playing, because when they are right, boy, they are really right. Extremely talented interior defensive line rotation for Cincy, led by, of course, DJ Reader. So we'll see if they can hold CMC. This might be the toughest test they faced as a run defense the entire year, specifically because of how prolific Christian is at maximizing every single run through vision and tackle breaking ability and balance through contact and all that kind of stuff. Like, even if you fit it correctly, he's the kind of guy who's going to get 1 or 2 extra yards and turn a 3-yard gain into a 5-yard gain, that's what makes CMC so good, is he just keeps you on schedule, in addition to providing that dynamic element as a runner and a receiver. So very, very tough test for the Bengals run defense to keep him from keeping them on schedule, if that linguistically makes sense.
I followed it.
Yeah, somebody out there followed it.
Long and noisy train, but I followed it. The rest of the 49ers offense is interesting. I'm just going to call it odd. Kittle's usage is odd. If anybody has him in fantasy, you already know this. Super frustrating. I'm just going to call it weird. Had 7 total targets over the 3 games combined before Minnesota. Had 7 targets alone in the Minnesota game. So makes predicting his usage or impact in the passing game a total crapshoot, which makes him a perfect 49ers offensive player, as you're well aware, having to, predict Ayuk's usage or not over the past couple of seasons. You're familiar with this trend. But it does sort of, it's consternating to me, because I'm like, if you have George Kittle and he wins as often as he does, even when he's not targeted, especially as a vertical threat, which fewer tight ends really fit that, matchup profile. Why wouldn't you do that more often? Doesn't that seem like a good thing to do? But somehow Shanahan loves to consternate us multiple different ways. This is just one of them. One guy who's been heating up, both in terms of looks and impact, is Juwan Jennings. He is a guy that keeps showing up, and he keeps showing up in sort of those high leverage situations, first downs. He's becoming sort of the quiet gotta-go-to guy on like 3rd and medium, starting to pay those off. Overall production, not super high, but if you look at the impact and the leverage of the catches he has made over the past couple of weeks, like the thermometer is going up there. The Juwan Jennings factor is heating up in this offense. But the real story of San Francisco's offense is, drumroll please,
Brock Purdy is out.
Yeah.
And I will say this, EJ, let's put a scenario out into the ether. It's 2 minutes to go. It's a 2-point game. Sam Darnold drives the field, sets up a game-winning field goal. An easy game-winning field goal. And they make it. The rookie kicker makes it.
You mean one they make.
One they make. Or if he just outright throws a touchdown, doesn't even leave it in the kicker's hands.
Ugh.
The takes all across sports media, whether it's online or on TV, the takes will be fucking nuclear. And I am going to stay far, far away from it. It doesn't even matter how well Sam plays. I'm just going to give him a golf clap. Say, good job, Sam. I'm not going to try to project who's going to start. I'm not going to try to get into Kyle's head about who he favors, who's better. I'm not even going to attempt it because as far as I'm concerned, all Kyle Shanahan cares about at this point is not losing 3 in a row. That's all he cares about. Whether it's with Brock, whether it's with Sam, I'll let like Mad Dog Russo deal with like the toxicity of trying to create a quarterback controversy. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to watch Sam Darnold play football again in the year of our Lord 2023. Don't know if we're ever going to see it again, but I'm going to enjoy it while we can. Sam, if there was ever a time for you to play well and hopefully save your career, it's now.
I'm here for the chaos. You know the scene at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You're a messy little bitch, EJ.
Where the guy's face just melts at the end of Raiders, right? That's going to be like sports talk media in general. If Darnold does anything resembling competence and the 49ers win really by any margin in this one, Monday is literally going to be face melting. It's going to be fun to watch. I'm with you. I will be, away from that chair or away from that pool in my folding chair with a beer, just watching it unfold because it's gonna unfold if that happens.
If it does happen, it will probably happen. Oh God, why am I doing this? It'll probably happen because it's a Brandon Ayuk game, EJ.
Was coming. I knew we couldn't make it through this segment without talking about Ayuk, and rightfully so. Like Ayuk's playing great this year, but it is fun to recycle all the cold, medium, freezing, hot, searing takes of Brett Coleman over the past couple of years about Brandon Ayuk. And I don't know at this point. I'm so far like spun by the curse that I'm not sure whether it's helping or hurting or pushing Ayuk up or pushing Darnold down. I can't figure out which one it is anymore. So again, I'll just sit back in my lawn chair and tip my beer and
I'm just
watch
saying, man, it's a very man coverage heavy defense in Cincy. Like, who's their best man beater? It's Brandon Ayuk. Like if it's not CMC, working against linebackers and safeties all day, like it's gonna be Ayuk. So like on paper, he should go off, which means he definitely won't. I'm gonna start him anyway because we know where this is going. But
you did this to yourself. You really did.
It's what I get for drafting him every single year. Even
something
when I tell
like
myself
that.
I'm not going to.
All right, let's talk about the 49ers defense. They've looked a little more fallible for the past couple of weeks. They, again, 2 weeks ago, if you said there were cracks in the 49ers defense, we both would have called you crazy. They'd played very complete games over the first month of the season. If Burrow can get hot, just like Cousins did, and we know he can, we've seen him hit, I think, even streaks more consistently than Kirk has. But Microwave Cousins, we'll talk about him in a bit. If Joe's throwing darts early, it could be a long day for the Niners. We talked about the corners down the field. We talked about Jamar's matchup with them. CBs are going to get tested, all three of them. They're going to test both outside corners, and because the Bengals have good enough wide receivers, they're going to be testing the nickel as well. Outside guys have been struggling with penalties down the field, and Oliver's going to draw Tyler Boyd, who is one of the better wide receiver threes in the league, and Joe will hit him. Joe does not play favorites. He does not tend to over-prioritize or over-target people. He will take what the defense gives him, and if the nickel is trailing Tyler Boyd, he's going to throw it to Tyler Boyd. So if they get on that roll, and Joe is throwing pinpoint darts, we've seen him do it before, early on, 49ers could be playing catch up in this one, which I think if we, again, given that take a month ago, given where the Bengals were and the 49ers were, people would have said, what are you talking about? But future us is saying, I don't know if that starts happening. And the Bengals have certainly been rounding back into form. Going to be a lot longer day for San Francisco.
In terms of the plan, the defensive plan for the 49ers, I'm not 100% sure what they're going to do. They've kind of had a little bit of everything so far this year. It's been less cover two heavy like what we saw with D'Amico Ryans, more man coverage heavy. Definitely a lot more aggressive, I would say, in terms of blitzes. Like Steve Wilkes is not afraid to bring pressure. I'm not entirely sure, like I said, what they're going to do. But in terms of what might work, what might give them their best chance at success, I would say bringing even more blitzes this week is probably what's called for here. You know, I'm talking like cover one dog, whereas man coverage across the board, single high safety. You're bringing 5 rushers instead of 4, which would be Fred. Man, breakfast beers doing wonders on me today, EJ.
I'm going to say it's not just for breakfast anymore, folks.
Well, we've been up since like 4 a.m., so it's a lunch beer. It's a lunch beer, technically.
Agreed.
But Fred is just as good of a blitzer as he is in coverage. He doesn't get credit for that, but he's an excellent pass rusher. And so I would say bringing him is crucial in this game because of how much empty protection that Cincy likes to use, because Joe Burrow likes to use empty protection, meaning 5 guys protecting, 5 out in the route. Like, that's why I think that they should be blitzing here, is because you want to create as many one-on-ones as you can with Bosa, as many one-on-ones as you can with Hargrave, like with, honestly, the entire defensive line. Bringing an extra guy to either give you like an extra contain rusher, which would be Fred kind of looping around the outside to give your edges and 3 techniques, the freedom to work inside and not have to, use your edges for contain, but use Fred for contain so that Bosa can get like a true 2-way go. That would be really nice to see, or even just using him to occupy the center. So again, you get one-on-ones across the board. Using him on stunts, using him on twists, like using him in, even you can use him in a 4-man rush and use him. How do I explain this without a diagram? So there's like a
whiteboard time.
There's a 5-man pressure that can become a 4-man pressure with a change call where like Fred is rushing. And if you get a running back fast to the flat, the edge will just peel off. Now, I wouldn't want to waste Bosa on that, but if he's rushing from the other side, and then their answer is a running back fast to the flat, which since he does quite a lot, you just peel off the edge, and then all of a sudden the tackle's blocking nobody, and then the guard's blocking a 3 technique, and then Fred just comes right through. Like San Francisco's done that several times this year. Like I just think all manner of using Fred as a pass rusher is key in this one, specifically because of how the Bengals pass protect with only 5 guys instead of 6 or 7.
Be nice if they can find that balance. Speaking of balance, brings us to our last game, and this is the one I alluded to at the top, where people might say, why'd you pick that game? Vikings versus Packers.
Mm-hmm.
First off, like, barf, but we have to talk about them. These two teams on average, and this is fascinating, split every year. Vikes are literally 8-10-2 versus the Packers over the last 10 years. Like, you want a series that goes right down the middle? This is it. 8 wins, 10 losses, and 2 ties. Like, that is as close as it gets. One of the reasons we're talking about it is because,
other than 10-10, you mean?
Yeah.
second closest as it gets.
But if you go to those ties and went back and looked at them and looked at how close they were to being a win for either team, most likely, again, ties in the NFL, like even single point, like field goal wins in the NFL. A couple calls go either way. The other team gets it. Like, this is an incredibly even series. One of the reasons we're talking about this game is because of the Vikings mini resurgence, which we didn't predict last week. one of our many fallible calls. We expected that Vikings were going to lose that game. There's going to be more trade deadline talk. Nope, they pretty much smushed all of that because the Vikings offense, like Microwave Kirk, will cover a lot, and lot is capitalized, lot of flaws, like almost any flaw. In fact, when he is throwing the ball like he was in the last game, I'm going to call that unstoppable. There were a bunch of throws he completed that I would basically give zero chance to. Like, he was under pressure, getting hit. The guy was tightly covered. Put it right in there. All the numbers, like, you just can't stop a perfectly thrown pass, and Microwave Kirk will throw a lot of perfect passes. Jordan Addison thriving in the absence of Justin Jefferson. A lot of people predicted that he wouldn't necessarily take the additional load as well, and that, people would focus on him and that would limit his production. I'm sorry. He looks like he did his last year at Pitt right now. He is winning everywhere at all three levels, short to medium game, and then immediately threatening with Yak. We talked about how important Yak is in a previous game. He's a problem right now. He's not just a guy subbing. Like, he is a guy that defensive coordinators really quickly, like, as soon as this week, are going to look at and go, okay, this is a focus. We need to see what we're going to do about him. We need to put a plan together for this one player because he's showing a level of dynamism, or showed a level of dynamism against a previously really good pass defense that should definitely worry some people. But talk about balance. We talked about that coming into this game. Minnesota running game lacks balance right now. They're getting it done. They're passable. They're average. They're whatever you want to say. But man, do they miss the explosive run play that they used to get with Dalvin in his heyday. They don't have a way to generate that right now. And so their runs are okay. If you look at them from an efficiency standpoint, they were really bad to start the season. They've certainly come up, but like Cam Akers last week was like 3.1 a carry or something. Like, it's just good enough to keep doing it, but they're not getting anything out of that side of the ball. They're really doing it just to keep some balance. And then all of their sort of dynamism and explosiveness is coming out of the pass game. And in some ways that makes them easier to defend, especially if Kirk has a cooler day. But what do you think the Packers need to do against a suddenly hot Vikings offense?
Respect Jordan Addison for one, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody. Like, I thought when Addison came out, I thought he could go with the first round very easily. Like, I like Jordan Addison a lot. First round pick was totally cool with me. I saw him as a very high end number 2 receiver that if you really needed him to be a number 1, like a Tyler Lockett, like he could do it for a stretch, but I never saw him as like dominant alpha number 1, like every single week you can count on him. And so going into this test without Justin Jefferson against a very good Niners D, I was like, oh, I don't know about this. Like, you, and all of a sudden he played like a true number 1 receiver in the NFL and got 2 more touchdowns. Like, all this kid does is catch touchdowns. And I'm like, okay, I think I might have underestimated Jordan Addison in the sense that he's not the number 2 receiver version of Tyler Lockett. He's the 1B version of Tyler Lockett, if that makes sense. Like, the guy that if DK's out, you're not worried about the pass game because he can play that role. And not to mention KJ Osborne stepped up, Brandon Powell.
Everybody.
I mean, my God, everybody.
When Kirk's throwing the ball like that, it's everybody because he's putting it on him. And, we've seen Lamar put it on his receivers and them not catch it. Like, Kirk put it on him and they all caught it. It was stunning. But
Addison in particular really, I don't want to use the word surprise. Like, he didn't surprise me, but he exceeded what I thought he could have been when pressed into that role as, like, we need you to be a number 1. Like, and not just survive, but thrive. Like, that was really, really impressive to me. So I think it's safe to say the Vikings hit on that one. All Minnesota does is draft good receivers, apparently. They're very, very, very good at that, and Addison's another one of those in a long train of success. In terms of the Vikings defense, they are still blitzing like crazy. They will continue to blitz like crazy. What kind of annoys me is that just based on the personnel packages they're playing, arguably their most effective pass rusher has not been on the field because they've used a lot of packages with one linebacker, and Ivan Pace is not the one linebacker they're putting on the field. even though he has by far their best pass rush win rate on the team. It's 30%, which is outrageous, but he's not getting snaps because they're usually only putting one linebacker on the field and having like Josh Metellus, of all people, essentially play Will instead of having Ivan Pace play Will. So I have my issue with Brian Flores for not putting my guy on the field. But other than that, boy, they play a risky style, but I guess it's working.
It'll pay off until it doesn't. And in terms of the Ivan Pace usage, it reminds me of a couple of other conversations we've had in other places this week about rookie usage. One was here, Joey Porter Jr., like, hey, he's playing really well. Why don't you play him more? And Quentin Johnson, like, you're playing him, but we don't really think you're using him right. Like, can you keep playing him, but put him back to what he was really good at doing in college? And Ivan Pace was really good at blitzing in college, like second highest pressure rate in this entire class. Like, just a really, really good blitzer. Everybody knew that. He goes to Brian Flores. We're like, sweet, match made in heaven. And they don't use him that way. Don't understand it. Don't need to. Hope it changes because, man, Ivan Pace blitzing on third down is a lot of fun. Switching over to the Packers offense, I want to start off with an interesting fact of the week. This comes from my colleague Taylor Dahl over at Windy City Gridiron. She dug this one up. Credit to Taylor. She's doing great work over at Windy City with the interview series. Good stuff. Packers haven't had a 300-plus yard passing game since December 12th, 2021. That is the longest streak in the NFL right now.
And that's including a lot of Aaron Rodgers games in there.
That is mostly Aaron Rodgers games if you're keeping score at home. Jordan Love right now on the struggle bus. Under 60% completion for the season in a Matt LaFleur offense. That's the kicker there, is Matt LaFleur's offense is generally very good at getting the quarterback scheme touches so that their completion percentage would presumably be higher. Not working out right now. 10 TDs with 7 picks. Not awful, but those are like rookie numbers. And some people might say, well, Jordan Love is a rookie. He's not. He's a third-year player. He's seen a lot of football, but he is learning like a rookie, and those are rookie-like production numbers. Has a QBR under 15. This is the one that's just a dagger. In 2 out of the last 3 games, the get-right game against Denver helped out a little bit there, or it would have been 3 out of 3. Like, confidence is going to start to be a problem, not only for Jordan himself. I don't know him, never interviewed him, don't know what he's like in terms of mental makeup, but the confidence outside of himself in terms of the overall offense. This is what happens when the weight of a team's success is put on one player or one unit and they don't deliver over a period of time. Like, people start to grouse. People start to go, what's going on here? Why don't we make a change? We're all out here playing as hard as we can. We're not getting results. Like, that's what I mean. Like, overall confidence. I know fan confidence, obviously, from checking some Packers media, is already in the toilet. But in terms of confidence, it really matters in the room amongst the players and the coaches. Like, if they continue not to be able to deliver on offense and Jordan's playing at this level, like, it's going to become a thing. And it's not going to be super long until that happens.
Who was it in Packers media that you had a bet with about?
Oh, it's not me. It's not me. That's Zim's bet with Peter Bukowski about, I think it's...
Was it passer rating? Well, because if it's passer rating, because I know the bet was like Justin Fields against Jordan Love. It was either in QBR or passer rating.
Or
right
EPA
now,
per play. I think he might have given him EPA per play, which gives Justin the rushing yards. But yeah, that one's like a two-lane horse race right now.
Even passer rating's not close. Like, it's still pretty far in Fields' favor. I will say in regards to like the Matt LaFleur offense and how we're used to seeing just guys be open all the time. When I was watching film preparing for this game, I noticed a lot of receivers. Honestly, structurally, it reminded me of the Matt Canada offense in Pittsburgh, in the sense that it's a lot of screenplays on downs that you don't typically expect a screen, like second and short. We're calling swing screens. First and 5. Like, you get the benefit of a penalty, so it's 1st and 5. Why don't we take a shot here? Nope, we're calling spacing. And the offense structurally It's a lot of stuff at the sticks. It's a lot of receivers turning around and showing their numbers. And I know we're used to saying, oh, LaFleur's really good at scheming up guys to get open. And I still think he is, but he's not calling the offense that way. Like, he is calling it like Canada is calling the Steelers offense. And I would almost say it feels like the training wheels are on. And he's calling it very conservatively. He's calling it very scared to let his quarterback throw down the field, because good things generally don't happen when they throw it down the field. And so structurally, everything's always contested, because again, we're having to throw into these windows where guys are sitting down in between zones, and then it gets turn around, catch the ball, get tackled. Like that's what it is right now, to the point where the Packers have the second highest percentage of their routes being contested, 19.5%. That's a lot of routes being contested. That is third behind only the Steelers and the Falcons. The Steelers are second and only by like 0.6%. So it's rough out there to be a Packers receiver, because you're not really given an opportunity to run into space deep down the field. You're not really given an opportunity to work in the deep intermediate area of the field. Like, they're just not really calling that type of stuff, because they're calling a very safe offense structurally, because I just don't think they trust Jordan to make those throws. I mean, as a team, the Packers have a completion rate on throws of 20-plus yards down the field of 21.2%. Like, the Bears, EJ.
The Bears
are at 48%. On 20-plus yards down the field. Like, it's not good. It's not good. And they're calling the offense like they don't trust their quarterback. And it's not like Love played terribly last week. Like, he wasn't objectively horrible. But just looking at the offense, it feels like they are designing it in a way where he can't be horrible, because they're afraid of him being horrible if they open it up. And that might be an even worse problem, if we're being honest about it.
Yeah, it reminds me of the baseball stat war, wins above replacement in terms of a replacement level player, that being an even line in that statistic. Currently, for the last 2 to 3 weeks, Jordan Love has been well below replacement. Like, again, not awful, not like actively creating negative plays for your team, but most other quarterbacks in the league are giving you a few shots a game where they're, prospectively adding points or perspective points. Like, doesn't feel that way with Jordan Love right now. And from an efficiency standpoint, Aaron Jones was pretty effective in his return, 4.4 a carry. It seems like they had him on a pitch count. He only got 8 carries, so that's the flip side of that. More would be very good for this offense right now. Aaron Jones, a dynamic player when he's fully healthy that can carry the load, and man, do the Packers need it right now, because they're not getting it from Dillon. But he's still limited in practice. It feels like they're kind of like, come on back. Like, we don't want to hurt you, but we really need you. So we're going to try and, again, pick the few spots a game where you can influence it. And they don't need that right now. They need their, awesome running back that they paid a lot of money, who's very good, to come back, be fully healthy, because they're counting on him to sort of carry the base or create the base for this offense, and then let Jordan make a few plays a game in selected spots. That I think that was the plan going into the year. And instead, you get Jones hurt, and a lot more gets thrown on a Jordan Love's plate a lot earlier. They do that for a couple of weeks, and then it starts not working out, or working out in a very negative fashion. And now you get what you're talking about, which is this sort of ratcheting down to like, this is as far as we can push it, because if we go anymore, this motor blows up, and we don't want that.
She can't take any more, Captain.
No,
we
already got the steam max level. Like, just keep it from exploding until we get some guys back healthy, and then maybe we can try and reel some stuff off. But it feels extremely limited right now.
On defense, I would say it's not to the same degree, but similar kind of story where I feel like because of a rash of very unfortunate injuries, they're not playing up to the level where on paper going into this year we thought they could have. Quay Walker surprise, surprise, has kind of turned it around, and he's been very good for them. But they're overall pretty thin at linebacker with the Campbell injury. Devontae Wyatt's banged up. You had Stokes go on IR. You had Savage go on IR. Jair's banged up a little bit. I feel like 80% of their defense has shown up on the injury report in the last month. Like it's a very a combination of hurt and injured group, depending on who you're looking at. Which again, two very different things. Hurt and injured, two different things. But their depth has been tested and their depth has been found wanting. And going up against a Vikings offense led by a quarterback who apparently can just throw it at will all over the yard, down a bunch of DBs. I don't know. I'm not liking the recipe for this one, especially if Minnesota gets a couple scores early and then all of a sudden you have to throw at Jordan Love. Like, do I think the Packers can dig out of that hole? Not really. Like this whole vibe of this game doesn't feel right to me. And I feel like the only person who's going to win is Tom Grossi getting all the Google ad revenue. If they get their doors blown off by Minnesota, like he'll be happy. Well, he won't be happy, but he'll be compensated for his time. There's a lot of Packers fans out there who won't be. It's just another depressing Sunday for them.
Yeah, Will fan for beer is going to be the sign after this one. And it's, the only real hope I see, and I say hope in air quotes because I'm not hopeful that this happens because it'll be a worse game overall. But if the Vikings play down, which they have a tendency to do, like if Kirk Cousins comes out and he's cold and they play down to an opponent, this one could be close. Again, like two fighters that both slip in the mud and end up like face first within the first minute of the round and then just kind of wrestle around for the rest of the time. Like that's what this game could turn into. I don't hope it does, because I don't think that'll be just mostly a frustrating watch for everybody, us, the fan bases on both sides. Like that's not a quality result, but that's the chance I think the Packers have in this one. Other than that, with all the injuries on defense, like look, Rashawn Gary, we talked him up a lot and he's got a respectable 28 pressures, 6 sacks, not getting a ton of help. He was. Wyatt had 19, but as you mentioned, he's out. Kenny Clark, solid as always, has 16 pressures. Like, again, if all the guys were in the defensive line, if all the guys were in the secondary, this would be a very different picture, at least on defense. And then maybe like the Steelers, they could lean on their defense and just let their offense do the minimum and get a, not expected number of wins or above expected number of wins based on that sort of, just sniping folks at the right time with one offensive touchdown in the fourth quarter. But that's not the way it's lining up right now for Green Bay. And you put in the notes, feels like two teams headed in different directions. And I couldn't agree more. Like the Vikings coming off a win against a, previously very powerful San Francisco team, and the Packers just kind of bumping along the bottom. All right.
Almost 2 hours into the show already. Probably have to do a little bit of a cut down, but that's okay.
A little.
Before we head out, parting glass section for quick parting thought, if we have one. Emphasis on the word quick. We're pretty bad about that part, but we're going to try. My parting glass. I was kind of looking at potential head coach availabilities. Ooh. Bears are probably going to be one, given how this season is going. Even though they beat the Raiders, like I don't think like that's enough, right? I have to imagine there will be an opening in Chicago, especially if they end up with the first overall pick, because that is going to be a very attractive job, and they'll probably be able to get almost anybody they want to. The Raiders, also a possible opening because they lost to the Bears. That's about as embarrassing as it gets this year. And it kind of depends on what the McDaniels contract looks like and how much Mark Davis is willing to pay Josh to not coach the team next year after he's already paying John Gruden to not coach the team. Like, Davis can afford it. The money is there, but it's more about if he wants to, again, get a new coach. We'll see. The finances of it make things kind of interesting there. Tennessee, dark horse, also kind of possible as a head coach opening, seemingly because it feels like Carthon is more the one guiding that ship right now. I don't think Vrabel would have traded Kevin Byard. I think Carthon would have. because Carthon's trying to collect assets. He's trying to position himself to rebuild a team that arguably is in need of a teardown and rebuild. Looking around the league at the other bad teams, we know Dable's safe, Belichick is safe. He just got extended. Sean Payton's probably safe. Gannon is safe considering how hard the team is playing for him. I don't think that's a 1 year thing there. We'll have to see about Brandon Staley. There's been some very concerning losses that arguably shouldn't have been losses this year, but we'll see if the team can turn it around. If the Chargers are good at anything, it's starting out 2-4 and then ending up 11-5. We'll have to see. That would be so Chargers of them. So looking at all of these potential destinations for a hot coaching hire, say one Jim Harbaugh, who is coming under fire at Michigan right now for this sign stealing scandal. Let's be honest. Every major college program is doing this to some degree. Now, maybe there's not a 600-page manifesto involved and a $15,000 travel budget involved. Maybe not every school's doing that. But yeah, every school is stealing signs to some degree. When you also factor in the suspension he already had this year, all the difficulties in the politics that come with being a college coach, let alone at a program like Michigan, it's very possible that Jim is just fed up after this year. If they win the Natty, he doesn't really need to stick around anymore. So let's say Jim Harbaugh is going to be fed up with the governing bodies of college football, and he's looking at one of those destinations that we listed out there.
Don't you put this on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't you put this on me.
See, you thought I was going to say the Bears.
You were last week.
But then a whole bunch of people said, yeah, but him and Kevin Warren hate each other.
True.
Okay, I'll accept that premise. Let's say Kevin Warren, even if Jim said, I'll come coach the Bears right now. Let's say Kevin Warren said, no, we're going to do Ben Johnson or whatever. In terms of the non-Bears destinations that, to me, make the most sense, I would say Jim Harbaugh, welcome to Las Vegas. Fun fact, the Raiders are where Harbaugh got his start as a coach. They gave him his first chance as a coach. He had freshly retired. He became the quarterback's coach in Oakland at the time. They went on a Super Bowl run, and then a couple years after that, he got his first head coaching opportunity in San Diego. He loves the West Coast, genuinely loves the West Coast. Not that Vegas is the West Coast, but it's accessible, I think that I feel like the Raiders need a cultural reset that perhaps only Jim Harbaugh could give them.
Yep.
I think that he would have a blast not dealing with the internal politics of Big Ten football. And not to mention, considering the Raiders are now the 9th most valuable franchise in the NFL, I think that they will have more than enough liquidity to meet his financial demands, which are probably north of $10 million a year at this point. So looking at all those options, let's take the Bears out of the equation. Do you agree? I know you want Ben Johnson. Do you agree that the Raiders are the most likely destination for Jim Harbaugh?
Likely is such a tough word here, but I think they would be one of the most fun destinations. And I think it would probably be one of the best hires for the team, because what you talk about in terms of they need to change course in a fundamental way, not we need some tweaks, we need this. The roster's pretty good, but we talk often about teams with rosters that are pretty good that are not being maximized. That's clearly the Raiders right now. They got a bunch of good players on both sides of the ball. They are not getting the most out of them right now. It's certainly not in terms of consistency and in terms of unanimity, in terms of all pulling the sled the same direction at the same time. And Harbaugh has shown an ability to bring that to teams he coaches, and I think that would be a welcome addition in Las Vegas. So I'm here for it. Plus, it means he doesn't coach the Bears. So, woohoo!
Are you anti-Jim Harbaugh?
A little bit for the Bears, I am. I'm not anti-Jim Harbaugh as a coach. He's done great things at Michigan, especially over the last 3 years, I'd say. He's really changed his approach, and it's showing. Michigan is a much different football team this year than it was 3 years ago, and he's still the coach, and it's because of changes he made and changes he allowed to happen in the program. I think that's a mark of a really good coach. I do not think Harbaugh to the Bears would go well. I know a lot of Bears fans disagree with me. I know a ton of Michigan fans disagree with me. I know a lot of Jim Harbaugh fans that just clearly flat out disagree with me. I do not think that is a quality thing. I also think, and this is the scary part, that it is such a Bears move if it was available, that ownership, more so than the general manager, president, Warren, who you mentioned earlier, who has Big Ten history with Harbaugh, that's not pretty. I think management would be like, but he was a Bear. Like, but he was a Bear, Kevin. Like, he was a Bear. We should have him. He was a Bear. And
was Ben Johnson a Bear? No.
Yeah, I don't think that's the best particular match, but it does feel very much like a Bears thing to do. Now, it might work out. A lot of people are making that argument that it would work out. If you want to like do something similar, but not the same, I'd be really interested in Mike McDonald, who worked for Jim Harbaugh as of a year ago. That would be fun. But yeah,
I get the sense that if Harbaugh is leaving Michigan, I think Michigan gets McDonald.
That would be very interesting as well. But yeah, if we're just talking about spite moves. But yeah, I would like to see Ben Johnson because of his ability not only to craft an offense, but not necessarily have that offense be super dependent on certain player archetypes. Like he took a Jared Goff, who was generally considered mid-tier or below, and got very good results with him. I think that's a very good mark of a coach as well, and certainly something the Bears need in terms of offensive consistency. So we'll see. People change. This when they go from coordinator to head coach. It's a different role. It's an expanded responsibility. There's just a lot more on your plate. Some people handle that really well. Some people don't. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But I think Harbaugh in Vegas would be fun.
Like I said, folks, we're really bad at the whole quick parting thought. We'll give you parting thoughts. I can't guarantee it'll be quick.
I'm going to do better. All right, set the watch. I think I can do it in 2 minutes.
Go for it.
All right. I love things in the NFL that are not as they first appear. If you look at Steelers running back Jaylen Warren, you'll see a guy who's 5'8" tall and assume that he's probably a liability in pass pro. Then if you look a little bit farther into those weight stats you were talking about earlier, you go, 215 pounds packed onto that 5'8" frame. I don't know, maybe. Might give you some pause about your take as built like an absolute fireplug. Then if you look at tape, you'd see something completely different. You would see Warren lighting into anybody and everybody that enters the pit backfield and lighting them up. Not just engaging them, but like blasting them. He is violent in pass pro. And if you gave Kenny Pickett truth serum and asked him which running back he wanted on, say, a slow developing third and long pass play, I would be shocked if you didn't hear Warren's name. He's that good in pass protection. And that was less than 2 minutes.
Also a very good receiver.
Yes.
So just in general, put him on the field on third down, and you're going to profit. Really good player.
Fully agree.
I think he's better than Najee this year. I really do.
He gives them a different dynamic, and certainly I think most people, especially if you stacked up Najee, who's much taller, solidly built, and then look at Warren, who's a little bit shorter and certainly a little bit faster, people just tend to think, oh, third down back, more explosive, but oh, geez, what's going to happen when that defensive end gets loose? Take a look at what Warren does to those folks. He uses leverage to his advantage. Power pack of a player, really fun. I'm with you. I don't think the drop off would be very much at all if Najee's out for a couple games with an ankle and Warren starts.
Yeah, this is not a Theo Riddick type third down back.
No,
this dude's yoked. All right. We're going to get out of here because we're approaching 2 hours on the show. I want to thank all of our sponsors for helping to make it possible. I want to thank our executive producers over on the Patreon, Marat, Consti, Andrew, Liam, Connor, and Mike L. I also want to thank Homage for working with us. EJ, you're wearing an Homage hoodie because they got a National Park Series, so you got the Denali.
And the cool thing about their National Park Series is not only does it look cool and, of course, feel great, 5% of all the purchases go to help support National Parks causes, which is awesome. I love spending time outside. Think those places are really important to who we are as a country, and I was thrilled to find out that they were giving back through this program. So definitely asked one for mine in the quarterly order, and love the design. It's just as comfy as all the other ones, so really happy that they're a supporter of the program. They've been great partners. And, hey, if you want to support National Parks and support us, use the link in the description. Anything you purchase, National Parks, baseball, hockey, soccer, football. They have some college gear, like any of that stuff. If you use the link, help support the podcast.
I want to thank everybody, if you're still here this late in the show, for being here this late in the show.
Champs.
Definitely helps the YouTube algorithm, so to speak. And if you're listening on the audio-only version, we also appreciate you too. There's a lot less of you guys, but you're very special to us as well. We'll see you back here Monday for our Week 8 recap, where, once again, I have no expectations of us to be correct about anything, and we'll go over all the fun and probably new ways that we've discovered to be flat out wrong about the NFL. So make sure to come back in a few days for that. And until then, cheers.